The end is near for YNW Melly. 178 new documents were just filed against the Florida rapper on March 17th, 2022. Words from witnesses, as well as YNW Sakchaser's parents, have now been revealed. YNW Sakchaser's mother revealed in the courtroom that Sakchaser was about to be paid $200,000 through a record label with YNW Melly. Instead of paying the $200K, YNW Melly did the act towards him, making him pass. That way he didn't have to pay the $200,000. If this turns out to be true, YNW Melly will then be eligible for the penalty as he did the act towards two people for financial gain. In the court documents, we see YNW Melly's lawyer ask this question, well, you know, please tell me what your definition of pecuniary gain is. Prosecutors then reply, by statute, it means he committed this crime to make money or what have you. Well, there was, you know, in throughout a search warrant through Facebook, as well as through Jana Williams' testimony, YNW Sakchaser's mother, there was money that was being brought to or was going to be awarded to Anthony Williams, aka YNW Sakchaser. Mr. Williams was supposed to get $200,000 and you know, that was in text messages and also, I believe, in Facebook messaging, as well as the mother's testimony. And that money, apparently, was never obtained by Mr. Williams. YNW Melly's lawyers then reply, okay, do you know who was going to allegedly pay that $200,000 to Mr. Williams? Prosecutors then reply, well, I mean, I believe it was going to come through the record label. How it's paid out, I don't know. Now, around the time of Sakchaser and Juvy's passing, YNW Sakchaser started his music career. After the release of his two songs, Tropical and Back End, he started gaining the attention of YNW Melly's record label. Allegedly, with a $200K signing bonus in the air, prosecutors believe this was the motive for YNW Melly to do the act towards him. Prosecutors and law enforcement obtained this evidence through a search warrant on YNW Melly's cell phone. Another court document states, then also, we have a video of Mr. Demons admitting to doing an act towards two individuals in the head. This video was on Mr. Demon's cell phone, which was brought to my office by Jameson Francis, and that is how we had that, and that is all of the evidence that Your Honor has. Now, Mr. Demons in this statement is YNW Melly, with Jameson Francis being 100K management. Now, not only has prosecutors gone through YNW Melly's Facebook as well as social media messaging, but they now have found a video on YNW Melly's cell phone of him admitting to doing it. In more of the new court documents, they're claiming that after running ballistics reports, all signs of who did the act towards Juvy and Sakchaser were sitting in YNW Melly's seat inside of the vehicle. Now, in the courtroom, this photo of where everyone was sitting was revealed to the judge, with YNW Bortland, who was arrested with Melly, being the driver of the vehicle, had YNW Melly sitting directly behind him. That leaves YNW Juvy and YNW Sakchaser sitting on the opposite side of the car. Law enforcement states they used what's called the stick method. They used plastic sticks to match the trajectory of a firearm that could have been used from YNW Melly's seat. The trajectory from Melly's seat showed a perfect match to where YNW Sakchaser and YNW Juvy were affected once they were brought to the hospital and examined. In the new evidence reports, it also claims that the act was done inside of the vehicle, as law enforcement were able to use YNW Melly's cell phone as a GPS tracking device working with T-Mobile. Now, allegedly after the act was done inside of the vehicle, YNW Melly was then seen on GPS stepping out of the Jeep and walking around it in a circle motion. The theory is, after the act was done inside of the car, YNW Melly stepped out of the car and roughed up the vehicle from the outside, using his firearm to make it appear as if it went through a drive-by, which would then be their excuse for this entire incident. The evidence backing this theory is not only the GPS evidence, but as well of law enforcement finding shells from a firearm outside of where the vehicle was parked. They found shells that matched the same shells from a firearm under the floor mats inside of the vehicle, right beside where YNW Melly was sitting. As shared in the rest of the evidence files, law enforcement states, now these particular cell phones, which were both iPhone 10s, were on the T-Mobile network. Now, T-Mobile has a very interesting feature where it will tell you the environment the cell phone is in. So from these cell phone records, I can tell you the exact moment demons got out of the car and staged the drive-by location. Now, the two cell phones in YNW Melly's pocket, from my understanding, is going to either make or break this case. As on October 26, 2018, at roughly 3:30 a.m., we saw YNW Melly, YNW Juvy YNW Sakchaser, and YNW Portland at a recording studio before heading home. Video surveillance at the recording studio showed the four YNW boys hopping inside of their Jeep in the parking lot before exiting the block, with the driver of the vehicle being Cortland Henry, otherwise known as YNW Portland, had YNW Melly sitting directly behind him. Law enforcement were able to use Melly's cell phone as a GPS tracking device and noticed that the Jeep was driven into a side parking lot on a side street. When the Jeep was then parked into this random abandoned parking lot, law enforcement believes a distraction was then made inside of the car to catch Juvy and Sakchaser off guard. This is when YNW Melly did the act towards both of them in the vehicle. The GPS then tracked Melly stepping out of the vehicle, walking around his Jeep in a 360-degree motion, where YNW Melly and Portland roughed up the vehicle with firearms to make it appear as if a drive-by happened. Now, this would end up being YNW Portland's excuse for this happening when they brought Sakchaser and Juvy to the hospital. Meanwhile, YNW Melly ended up sprinting home from this back street, not even going to the hospital with his two best friends that passed in the vehicle. Law enforcement found casings from a firearm all over the pavement and grass where YNW Melly located on the GPS. Now, the concerning part, as I mentioned earlier, they found the same firearm casings under the floor mats where YNW Melly was sitting, and it wasn't until February 13th where YNW Melly was then arrested and brought into jail for the act that led to Juvy and Sakchaser's passing, with YNW Portland also being arrested and brought into jail for 2 counts of accessory and helping Melly cover it up. Now, with prosecutors handing over 178 pages now of evidence against YNW Melly, this is why his court trial has now been pushed back to May 23rd, 2022. At his latest court hearing, around 2 weeks ago at the time of this recording, it was announced by prosecutors, and more importantly Juvy and Sakchaser's parents, that they're no longer interested in sentencing YNW Melly to life in prison. Instead, they're looking to have YNW Melly serve the penalty, as they don't find it fair that YNW Melly gets to live on with his life, but their boys no longer do. And the most concerning part of it all is that if this $200,000 that was supposed to be paid to Sakchaser was the real motive for YNW Melly doing this, then YNW Melly will be eligible for the penalty, as he used financial gain as a last resort to doing this act. Now, if you want to stay up to date, make sure you subscribe. Anyways, it's been District Trending, and I'm out. Peace.